Oh, well, we made it another day. Oh boy, I don't know if we're going to get enough rain. Oh, I don't know if we're going to the beans are going to sprout. When children hear that kind of language, that doesn't attract them to it. What they need to hear is the enthusiasm and the excitement of, wow, look at the corn and you eat at dinner and look at what God's provided for us. And parents need to speak into their context affirming lingo. It's not about, well, we're on this homestead. Papa John's doesn't deliver out here, so we can't have pizza. No, it's listen to the frogs croak. Look at the moon. You can see the stars. Let's go make pizza. From our garden stuff and our it's a total contextual mindset, and kids, and and you got young kids, and you'll learn it faster than anything. Way more is caught than taught.
The Now That We're a Family podcast.
All right. Well, Mr. Joel Salatin, I tell you what, it's such a privilege and an honor to be able to sit and chat with you. It's kind of surreal because, when I started dating Katie about 10 years ago, her and her family had just recently visited your property in Virginia.
Farms.
Polyface Farms. And she was telling me all about it. And I had never heard of you. And then here we are being able to talk with you and having so much interest in really everything that you do and that you've done with your life. And hopefully in this conversation, we're going to be able to hear about kind of your vision for your family, what you've done in your family, and having a vision for multi-generational business and farming. But before we get to that, for those of our listeners that don't know who you are, could you, in your own words, kind of give us a big picture snapshot as to who you are, what you're known for, what it is that you do?
Sure. So we have a farm in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley, and I came here when I was 4. I was a little kid. Mom and Dad bought this property in 1961, and so I grew up here. So I'm second generation here. But Mom and Dad never made a living from the farm. Dad was an accountant. Mom was a school teacher. The off-farm jobs paid for the mortgage. And so by the time I was in late high school, we were debt free, but there was no going concern. But I had a love for the farm. I have an older brother and a younger sister. Neither of them was really interested in the farm, but I really loved it. Had my first chickens when I was 10 years old, sold eggs to a couple schools, restaurants, neighbors, people at church, that sort of thing. And that gave me my spending money throughout high school. And so then, I get up and I'm ready to come back. And man, how do we make this farm actually pay a living, pay a salary, a small farm? And my first thought was, well, I could milk about 10 cows and just sell the milk to neighbors. They all wanted it. And there was only one problem. The government said that was illegal to sell raw milk. And so that was out. And I've forgotten, but unlike God, I don't forget. God forgives and forgets, but we humans, we can forgive, but it's hard for us to forget. And so some of my antipathy toward the government is still there for people to hear. Anyway, I'm done, and I go off to college and come back, and I'm working at the local newspaper, and and living at home, and then Teresa and I got married. We fixed up an attic in the old farmhouse, and that's where we lived, up in that attic, and we called it our penthouse, not an attic. It's all how you look at it, and 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 we lived so cheaply that within a couple of years we were able to save enough that we could live for 1 year. Remember, we didn't have a mortgage, so I stand on the shoulders of greatness, where I'm very appreciative of having a platform to start, uh, and so because if we didn't grow it, we didn't eat it. We didn't have a TV. We drove a $50 car. We never bought clothes. I mean, we weren't nudists, but we just didn't have any fashion interests. We didn't go out to eat. We didn't go on vacations. We didn't go on cruises. We didn't we had our own firewood so we could heat ourselves in the wintertime. And we were able to live on $300 a month. And so suddenly that little, 12,000, $12,000 nest egg that we accumulated, that was a pretty big stash of money for somebody that's living that cheaply. And so I jumped off the cliff, September 24, 1982. I left that newspaper office, came back to the farm, fully expecting to return to outside employment in a year or two. Just, nobody does this, nobody makes it. And as it turned out, we did make it. That little nest egg, just like the widow's cruse of oil, it just continued to extend out there. And we did make it. It was about 3 years until we could exhale, and say, okay, we're going to make it. And the farm then just continued to progress. And today we have about 22 full-time salaries, and about 20 several people live on the farm. And we do beef. So we do grass-finished beef, pastured pork, meat chickens, egg chickens, turkeys, lamb, rabbit, and we have a sawmill. So we do forestry lumber. We sell lumber as well. So it's a very multi-enterprise kind of thing. We have about 15,000 visitors a year. I've written 16 books, and we're just excited to be, to be blessed enough to encourage others. And we don't have all the answers, but we've done a few things right. Not all, but a few things.
Wow, that's so fascinating. And a talk that I heard you give online, that was a recorded talk of a talk that you gave at a homesteading conference, was working with your kids so they'll work with you. And that really stuck out to me, just because I think a lot of people want that when they start a family business, when they start a homestead, when, it's like that's the dream. It also rarely tends to happen, it seems like, in our Western culture. And so I'm just curious, how did kids factor into this whole journey? And do any of them work with you today? And how does that look?
Yeah, so we have two children, Daniel and Rachel. Daniel took a very high interest in the farm. Both of them, of course, helped and worked. Rachel is our little artist, though, and she wanted to go explore the world and do other things. And so she lives about 15 minutes away now. Daniel's 43, Rachel's 36, I think. And something like that. Might be off a year, but anyway, so Daniel now runs the farm. That baton has already been passed. He absolutely runs all the farm things. Rachel is not involved in day-to-day operations, but she and I wrote a book together. She does our postcard repertoire, pictures. She's real artsy, craftsy, and all that. And so she's nearby. So here we are. We don't know where the grandkids are going to end up. We only got 3 of those. Don't know where they're going to end up, if any of them will do it. But I will tell you that our team now is made up of both. Of course, Daniel is running day-to-day operations, but we have multiple 10 young people here that are part of full-time staff who are basically here for the duration. And so, we told our kids from day one, we said, we will support whatever you want to do. If you don't want to, do the farm, that's fine. But if you get into your late teen years and you express no interest in it, we will actively seek a young couple to take it over, because we believe in our vision and our mission and love the land too much to just give it to somebody who doesn't appreciate it. And that's a bit of a hard conversation. It doesn't mean that you don't love them. And so in my book, Family Friendly Farming, which has 10 chapters, or 10 commandments for working with your kids so they will want to work with you. One of the things that I point out in there, I have a chapter on on the parable of the talents. So often people confuse love with gifts, and one of the problems parents have is differentiating the talents and gifts that their kids have, and then giving the property or the benefits or the value. I mean, if it's not a farm, and maybe it's a family business, maybe you're, a haberdasher or a cobbler, or, a hairdresser or something else. It's not a farm business. But anyway, giving equity, let's just say give equity to people who don't know how to use it or don't want to use it. So in the parable of the talents, if you'll recall, Jesus gave the three different gentlemen that the owner gave the talents to. He gave one 5, one 3, and one 1. And of course, when he came back a year later, the guy with 5 had 10, the guy with 3 had 6, and the guy with 1 was scared and buried his, and it took from him. The question is, did Jesus love those three gentlemen differently? Were they equally loved? And you have to say, of course, they were equally loved. Jesus didn't differentiate his love from one person or another. They were equally loved. But he also recognized that they had different abilities. It says he gave them according to their ability. So this idea of, so when we go to our children and say, we'd love for you to have it, and we'd love to work with you, but if you don't, we'll be your biggest cheerleaders in whatever you decide to do. But we're not going to give it to you. That doesn't mean you don't love them. It means that you love the what you've built, your equity, your representation of God's abundance and your stewardship in that you value that too much to give it to somebody who's either going to squander it, sell it off for houses, or not, not appreciate it. And so I want at the outset here for everybody to understand that if I withhold something from someone who is not a good steward, that is part of my stewardship and has nothing to do with whether I love that person or not. That's simply discernment about where that equity is going to move in the hands of the person who receives it.
Voteberg Music Academy is different than other music lessons because the whole family can learn together. So instead of paying for each individual to learn music, which Elisha and I know from past experience can add up to thousands of dollars a month that our parents paid for private music lessons, families are able to learn by instrument. So we love seeing mothers and daughters and fathers and sons and siblings all learn guitar together or all learn piano together for less than $40 a month. So if that sounds like something that you are interested in, we have a coupon code listed in the description box to get you started for 10% off every month that you are a part of the Voteberg Music Academy community.
Yeah, that's
wow.
That's really well said, and I love just the way you, I guess, illustrated that point. And you mentioned the vision. You mentioned you had a vision for the property that was beyond just wanting to sell it to a developer or whoever, some random person. And that reminds me of something that you've said, and I'm going to paraphrase, but I think you said something along the lines of, if your vision doesn't go beyond your own life, then it's not big enough. Or if it dies with you, it's not big enough. And I want you to speak to that if you're able to, because I actually find that interesting, because what's a common theme within the homesteading community, or just within the living a rural self-sustaining life, it's actually oftentimes not very forward thinking. A lot of times it's very short-sighted and just saying, hey, let's just survive. We only need to make it a few more years. And so when you said that, it seemed almost counterintuitive to what I feel like the general community is oftentimes that maybe you even speak to. So could you kind of tell us what you mean by needing a vision beyond your own life?
Yeah. Obviously, a vision beyond your own life is, well, how are your kids going to perform? How are they going to? I mean, our kids are arrows. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full, and so so our kids tend to go beyond us in that regard. But what we do with our physical equity the trees, the grass, the cows, the tomatoes, the land under our feet, is actually emblematic of our stewardship of God's resources. He owns this. We don't. I mean, yeah, the courthouse says we own it, but we don't actually own it. We're on a pilgrimage stewarding God's stuff. And if we're on a pilgrimage stewarding God's stuff, we have a very, very long horizon as to how we want that stuff handled. We don't, it's not just, well, my time and it's over. It's can I reach out there into the future and create a stewardship insurance policy that the foundation that I've laid will be continually to be built on, by somebody else. And it may not be, it may not be your own kids. It may be somebody else that comes along. But I think too often our land right now, I mean, in the world, let's just say, is managed or cared for by people who are exploitive, who have a short horizon, who don't view, far into the future. I spoke at a biomass conference recently here in DC. Had lunch with a guy from Austria. He was here in the U.S. building a pellet mill for pellet stoves, wood stoves. This was a biomass, so it's as opposed to solar panels. It's it can biomass be the energy of the future. Rocket stoves and pellets and all sorts of cool stuff. And so I had lunch with this Austrian, and of course I've been to Europe many, many times. And I asked him, I said, why is it that the forests in Europe are so well managed? I mean, you don't see crooked and dead and junk trees. I mean, they're thin, they're straight. I mean, it's just unbelievable the way the Europeans manage their forests. And I was expecting some great academic, focus group answer. He didn't bat an eye. He just said axiomatically royalty. And it's one of those things. What? Yeah, did I hear you? Royalty? What's the deal? He said, yeah, the average tree in Europe is owned by the same family for 800 years. The average tree in America is owned by the same family for 40 years. He said, you cannot have a forest stewardship policy where you have turnover of management every 40 years. And it was an aha moment. It just struck me how powerful that was. That Europe enjoys today the benefits of a slow management turnover over the years. Now, I'm not here to say we ought to have kings instead of elected officials. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But again, that comes to your question. Well, why have a long horizon? Well, because a long horizon is what it takes. Because the biological clock, soil development, earthworm development, riparian development, forestal upgrading and development, all those things, that biological clock is not mechanical. You can't just go out and make more widgets or make more wheel bearings because you run the machine. No, it's a biological time clock that runs at its own pace, and we have to fit into that biological time clock and appreciate it.
That's so funny. Like, even as you're saying that, I'm thinking of books on health that we've read with like genetics, and how like even your genetics, like they have a slow, like with the health of our physical bodies, there is this long time span. Like it's a delayed effect on what we eat and how we steward our bodies, what's going to happen to the next generation, what's going to happen to the next generation, whether that's positive or negative. So we see this in so many different ways where God intended us to have this long-term vision. And it's so easy to think the next 40 years. That's what we think is, can this get me through the next 40 years and I'm good?
Yeah, it's a long tail. It's a long tail. And the more that we appreciate that length, the more I think the better chance we have of making a good long-term decision. The longer our horizon, the better our decision will be. And that's even, I think that's even better for the short term as well.
Hmm.
You know, and we're not conquistadors. We're not exploiters. We are here to return more wood, more grass, more soil, more worms, more water back to the Creator's hand than was originally dealt with. I just read something very, very fascinating. I'll share it. Uh, Wine and bread and olive oil are kind of the three, like that's the triad of spiritual and obviously Levitical and biblical history. Wine, bread, and oil. And I just read this thing, so this is the first time I've said this. And what I find is when I read something I think is really, really cool and interesting, I try to say it quickly so that way I'll remember it. And what this guy said was, the thing about those three things is that they all take participation by human hands. They're so these things that we think of as the pinnacle linchpins of that are physical object lessons of spiritual truth: bread, wine, oil. They require the hand of man to produce. Isn't it cool
Wow.
that God's greatest visceral representations of his relationship with us requires human hands to develop? It's kind of cool.
That is cool, because I think that I would probably assume that, things that you almost feel like human interference is looked upon and it's always so frowned upon, right? It's like we want to get back to just like, hey, we're just going to mess it up. But then you go to those three things and you're saying, no, it's just like it's kind of like the pinnacle example of stewardship, of saying, no, he actually gave us. We of course are using the natural resources, but then we're maximizing the natural resources and those three products that you just talked about are a good example of that.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
And when people ask me, what floats your boat? What gets you up in the morning? What gets me up in the morning is, when we came to this property, one of the reasons that Dad and Mom bought it was because it was the cheapest gullied rock pile in the whole region. It was cheap. It was absentee owned from 1914 to 1948. It was absentee owned and exploited and raped by the neighbors. You know how people, we were talking about the Dust Bowl, the Depression, and just took the land. So we measured one gully 16 feet deep, 16 feet from the top down to the bottom of the gully. I mean, these aren't just little rills. This is massive, massive gullies. Big, 3 to 5 feet of topsoil had washed away. Great big areas of rock. And I remember walking on the place and never setting foot on a piece of vegetation. It was that barren. Yes, even in Virginia. Today, those rocks are all covered up with soil, not real deep, but it's 14 inches, and the gullies have all stopped. We planted trees; they're all treed over, and it's arguably the luscious place in the whole community, in the whole region. I'm not saying that for bragging. I'm saying that, man, do you know what kind of affirmation that gives to, in my lifetime, have been able to be the hands and feet of God, if you will, to massage this niche of his creation and redeem it in true redemptive capacity to a place of not its perfect abundance, but to much more. And so that is really cool. Most people, they've got to they've got to travel somewhere to commune with nature. They got to go to a park, got to go to the Rockies, or Nepal or something. And they're going to go have this Nate. And I get to do this every day. And be a part of this. So that's pretty neat.
That is so cool. And I just think too how the world has the same perspective with like us humans being drains on the resources instead of creating resources. It's the same thing with like having children with our families, that like, oh, you're raising more dependents, little people that are just going to drain the economy, instead of like, no, you're raising more humans to steward these things that the Lord's given us. And it's really backwards, but a lot of Western culture has bought into those things and thinking less humans is just the solution. But I'm curious, how do you teach, because you've talked about this before, and I'm going to use your exact words here because I thought it was good. How do you create an attractive magnetic mission for your kids? And how do you teach children to see the end game? Hey, you guys, I just wanted to tell you real quick about my homeschooling course, Homeschooling the First 3 Years. It's all about laying a foundation of joy and confidence and fun and simplified homeschool in your home. So if you're in a place where maybe you're considering homeschooling your kiddos in the next few years, then this course is for you. It's going to break down not only what we do for homeschool in our family and what we've done for the first 3 years in homeschool, but it's also going to show you exactly how that looks. So I'm going to take a camera around with me vlog style and show you, how does it look to homeschool with a baby? How does it look to homeschool with a toddler? How does it look to homeschool multiple grades at one time? How do you navigate different learning tendencies? How do you navigate your learning style as a teacher? And how do you motivate children and get them to love learning? I love homeschooling my kids. One of my favorite things that I get to do with them each day, and it's something that I want you to love doing with your children as well. So if you look down in the description box, you will be able to find a discount code where you can get a discount off of Homeschool the First 3 Years, and I really hope that it blesses your home. And the context of this that I heard it in was kind of you talking about micromanaging children versus giving them responsibility. And yeah, I'd just be really curious to hear your thoughts on that, passing on that big vision, that big mission, and that end game for your kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, parents have to talk about it. You know, if the average farmer, unfortunately, and Elisha, you kind of alluded to it at the very top of the program when you were talking about the short horizon. We're just trying to survive. That kind of language, when children hear that kind of language, oh, well, we made it another day. Oh boy, I don't know if we're going to get enough rain. Oh, I don't know if we're going to, the beans are going to sprout, you know. And when they hear that kind of talk, that doesn't attract them to it. What they need to hear is the enthusiasm and the excitement of, wow, look at the corn, and you eat at dinner, and look at what God's provided for us. And this is, of course, why it's important to have some success and not just failure, which is part of my ministry, you know, to help people be successful and not failing. It's a lot easier to be excited about something you're successful about than something you're failing with. But I'm just saying that first of all, parents need to speak into their context affirming lingo. It's not about, well, we're on this homestead, Papa John's doesn't deliver out here, so we can't have pizza. You know, no, it's listen to the frogs croak, look at the moon, you can see the stars. Let's go make pizza. You know, from our garden stuff and our, you know, it's a total contextual mindset. And kids, and you know, and you've got young kids, and you'll learn it faster than anything. Way more is caught than taught. They're watching us, not so much. Yeah, they are listening to what we say, but they're listening to our demeanor, our countenance, our the whatever. They're seeing behind the curtain. They're seeing behind the curtain all the ugly and all the whatever. Disparate depression. So you know, you have to be enthusiastic about what you're doing. Then the second thing is, you've got to create a habitat in which the children are affirmed in their capabilities. I believe, and I'm not a child psychologist, but I believe that the way children get or receive self-worth is by successfully completing meaningful tasks. And all 4 words of those are important. Successfully completing meaningful tasks. Kids know make work when they see it. They know when they're doing something that's contributory to the family, that's really contributory. And then you want them to be successful at meaningful tasks, not video games, not social media, not TikTok. Learn how to whittle, how to handle a knife, crochet, wash dishes, plant a tomato plant, weed the green beans, split wood. I mean, all of these chores that used to be part of self-identity. Who am I? What do I enjoy? What am I good at? The reason that so many kids today at 18 have no clue about their own identity is because they've never done anything and been successful at meaningful tasks in their life. They've just been in the basement squishing their thumbs on a video game. That does not give you self-identity. And so one of the beauties of the homestead life, if you will, is that it does provide opportunity for chores, from gathering eggs to planting tomatoes to canning squash, that gives a habitat for cultivating this success. Oh, I know how to do that. I know how to do that. I know how to do that. And so and just by serendipity, basically, you develop self-identity and worth because you've successfully accomplished meaningful tasks. And so if somebody's listening and saying, "Wow, this guy sounds like a slave driver," he's just out here, get on it, kids, get. No. Actually, kids want to be like us if we don't dampen their enthusiasm. So one of the best ways to increase their enthusiasm for work, and I got to brag on my own daughter Rachel. When she was about 11, she had a couple friends that started a little newsletter, and of course the parents were the subscribers. And here came Thanksgiving. Well, let's do a Thanksgiving issue, and so each one of them, write what you're thankful about. And our daughter Rachel, I'll never forget it. I might even break down as I tell the story, but her essay was, "I'm thankful for work, because if it weren't for work, think how messy and chaotic the world would be."
Wow.
And for a 10 or 11-year-old, that's a pretty talk about a long horizon. That's a really long horizon. And so I'll just share one really, really practical tip, I think, for this, is to turn your work into a performance that's task oriented, not time oriented. So some of us that are adults can remember, go practice the piano for 30 minutes, or go weed the green beans for 30. I don't know why I'm stuck on green beans, but anyway, I love green beans. Go weed the green beans for 30 minutes. And when you get time oriented tasks, it teaches dawdling, because there's no incentive for completion. Well, I got to put in time. So, who cares if I hurry or try to do a good job or be efficient? I just got to put in my time. It doesn't matter if I learn the piece or actually accomplish anything. But if you say, all right, let's weed the green beans, and you tie a survey ribbon at a starting spot and a stopping spot, and preferably an older sibling or mom or dad is out there with that child and tying survey ribbons. I'll tell you what, if you get to your ribbon before I do, before I get to mine, you win, and you turn it into a competition. Kids love that kind of competition. The other thing is, if that's not, if you need to send them out by themselves, then say, here's the task. When you get done, we'll read a book, or we'll whatever, you'll get a quarter, or whatever the appropriate incentive is. It's all about completion. Well, now the child has a very clear, I got to get to that survey ribbon, and I'm complete. Now they can see a very definite end, and they're going to really go after it, because when they get done, they've completed something, they've fulfilled something. and then you give the appropriate reward, and that teaches efficiency, creativity. Hey, can I do this faster? Can I do this better? And all sorts of neat things happen when everything becomes performance based rather than time based.
That's also so helpful when it comes to what you're talking about, having quantifiable success, because we set our children up. I'm just realizing this, to not experience meaning, or how do you say it, success in meaningful tasks, if you don't give them a quantifiable meaning of success, right? An objective meaning of success. If it's just an indefinite, inevitable, on and on and on, or not inevitable, but indefinite, then there's nothing to actually quantify as being a success. I think it's a really great insight. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I'll give you a story now. I gave you one on Rachel. I gave you one on Daniel when he was we never in all of our years we never hired a babysitter. We never had a babysitter. We just took the kids with us, and so, and of course we homeschooled, and adults loved our kids because they knew how to interact with adults, so so a family moved in nearby. They had a son about the same age as Daniel. They're, whatever, 9 years old. And so when Daniel was even in diapers, I'd take him, the diaper bag and the little Tonka trucks and stuff, and we're going out and building fence. Okay. And so I'd pace myself by, I'm gonna get a drink of water every third fence post. So I'm post hole digging. I'm actually, by hand setting fence posts. And so that's the way I pace myself. You know how a little infant is. Oh, daddy, I'm thirsty. No, we can't have a drink until I finish this next post. All right. And so he grew up that way. All right. So now he's 9. Little neighbor boy moves in. They're the same age. So what do 9-year-old boys want to do? They want to build a fort. Okay. They got to build a fort. So Teresa, my wife, and the other boy's mom, they get together and a play date. All right. And they decide to build a fort over at his house. So the day comes. We take Daniel over there, and about an hour later, our phone rings, and it's the other boy's mother saying, "What is it with your son? He won't let mine have a drink of water until they finish the first wall." 9 years old,
That's great.
That's how you instill. That's how you instill this kind of confidence and this self-worth and this identity. Who am I? That's how you instill it in there. And getting ready for bed. I mean, that's always a kind of tug of war. So go get ready for bed. And they're it's 10 minutes later and they're still looking like their eyes are all right. Well, this clock here. You've got 15 minutes, and if you are ready for bed in 15 minutes. Then, there's some reward. It can be cash. It can be book. It can be food. It can be, whatever they like. I remember one year, dad did us, my brother and I, he said that if you guys will pick, we had all these wild blackberries. And he said, if you guys will pick 10 gallons of blackberries, I'll do something special for you. And we did. We picked the 10 gallons of blackberries, and we took most of a day and did a 3-mile hike up over the mountain and through the woods and got down to the house. And I still remember it was a big deal. It was a big deal to complete the 10 gallons of black and then get the reward. It was a very definite. Here's the qualifications, here's the success, and here's the reward. And those kind of things, we do it in the workplace, but we need to do it in the home too.
Yeah, even when you were talking about, that identity piece and being able to give kids an opportunity to experience success, it's crazy how even in my young adult life and being a father now, I still reflect on key moments of my life where I truly felt like I was adding real value to the home, to our family. And it was different than just maybe the normal educational tasks that I would have in my life. And so when you were saying that, it really resonated with me, and it made me realize I want to create those opportunities for my children, so that they are able to have that those identity affirming experiences early and often.
And I'm curious, okay, so I feel like this is like an age old question, but how do you balance like work, allowance, paying for work versus you're a part of the family, you just participate because we're part of the family? How do you do that? Because obviously, income can be a great reward, and we want our kids to be entrepreneurial and see where they can add value and earn money. But then there's also this like, well, we're all doing things and not getting paid for it. I don't want you to only do things when you get paid for it. So how would you encourage navigating that?
Oh, that's such a great question, and it comes up all the time. And so I differ, and again, I might be wrong, I might be right, but here's the way we differentiate it in our house. First of all, we never gave an allowance. I don't think anybody should get paid for breathing. Just because you're there doesn't mean you should get paid. So how do we differentiate it? The things that have to be done because you're part of the family, those don't get paid for. Nobody gets paid for cleaning the toilet. Nobody gets paid for making a bed. Nobody gets paid for washing the clothes. Nobody gets paid for setting the table. These are things that if you don't do, the home doesn't function. But anything that adds value to the home, bringing in eggs, bringing in carrots, okay, helping with the canning, those kind of peripheral, non-chore, non-daily maintenance, have two things are really that's what can be rewarded and compensated for, so you have this balance. You have this set of things. This is my service because I'm a human, and over here, this is what I'm doing, and I'm big on. I mean, I love chickens, I love eggs, and I think that almost every homestead family needs to turn their chicken business over to one of their kids as early as possible. I mean, like 5 or 6 years old is early enough to have a chicken business, and instead of having kind of basically, well, we have to go do the chickens, give it to one of the kids and buy their eggs from them. And now suddenly they're in charge, and they're looking for, they have to clean them and they have to gather them, and suddenly they're watching for, cracked shells and all the things, the nuances that are involved with, with doing the eggs. I'm big on children's gardens. You got 4 kids. Each of them can have their own garden spot, and they can contribute to the family that way. And in their own garden spot, perhaps you weigh it and you pay something for it, and then you have a family plot that they work in for free. That this is our family plot. We all work in this together, because if we don't do this, we don't eat. But we appreciate your savvy and your interest in wanting to add to the family plot. So, we're going to give a reward for what you do on your own over here, but you're responsible. If it doesn't do well, I'm sorry, that's your project. And so many times I think kids grow up and they've never failed at anything. And we definitely want them to be successful at something, but we also need to balance that with a few failures, some blighted tomatoes and some, squash bug, zucchinis and things to help balance out. It can't be everybody gets a reward. Well, it doesn't work like that. And so experiencing that participating in something beyond me, and then experiencing that I don't have the world by the tail, and sometimes things happen beyond my control. That's really important too. And so that's the way I would divide it. I would divide it by the stuff that's humanly necessary just for maintenance versus your own personal initiative.
I like that, not paying for maintenance.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think those are sometimes the easiest things to be like, oh, you do this, it has to be done, I'll pay you for it. Instead of like, no, you just do that just because. And okay, so I'm like thinking about that in a chicken business, and how hands off are you with young kids starting their own businesses, or how would you encourage that? Like, are you just totally like, hey, whatever happens, happens? Do you step in and like save them from destroying their business or killing the chickens, or how do you do that?
Yeah. So in general, it's a pretty hands-off deal. Now, I can be a benevolent banker. I can be a wise counselor, and I can answer questions when they ask, but they need to keep their own money, their income, their expense, and of course, in our house, there's including there's an offering, a tithe, a jar as well, and so I remember like yesterday, one time we were driving to church on a Sunday morning, and Daniel he started his rabbit business when he was about 8. And he's, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old. He's just sitting in the back seat, and suddenly he pipes up and says, "Man, I got to get going with these rabbits. I don't have any money to put in the offering plate today." And I thought, what a great reason to have a business, to have enough extra to give away. And so those kinds of things are very visceral, and they're very personal. And so yeah, I think there's a magic age between 8 and 10. I'll just go ahead and lay it out there. Before 8, children often don't know the value of a dollar. A 6-year-old often would rather have 2 quarters than a dollar bill. All right.
It's true.
Right. They want bright, shiny objects, something that clinkers and jinkles. They don't want paper. What's that? I draw on paper, and so but by the time they're 8, they can add, subtract, and maybe they've bought some things at a store. Maybe you've helped them, and they understand how to count money. Dimes and nickels and quarters and pennies and dollars and $5. They understand the concept of money. All right. And so that's when they can really start, and you can kind of take a bit of a hands off, and let them work through it. And what'll happen is they will ask for your advice. And there are few things that make your heart swell as much as a child asking you for your advice, rather than you telling them, what they're supposed to do. When they ask you for advice, that's like home run parenting. Okay, but then if you wait till after about 10 or 11, something else happens in a child, and that is they start becoming self-aware, and they start being a little more interested in what other people think about them, about how they interact socially with other people, and so they're not quite as intrepid and fearless about marketing. I mean, my favorite story is our granddaughter. She was the youngest of three, two older brothers. One brother had ducks. He was selling duck eggs. One had lambs. He was selling lambs. And here she is, and she's 6 or 7, really young. And she's seeing her brothers in their businesses, and she doesn't have one yet. So unbeknownst to us, one day we had a day where there were going to be a bunch of people at the farm. And she knew it. And so, unbeknownst to any of us, I mean, not even her parents, nobody, she went out in the field and picked a bouquet of wildflowers. And she comes to our farm store, and she looks around, she's whatever, 5, 6 years old. She looks around, and she finds this one, very handsome, tall gentleman standing there. And she walks up to him, and she says, and when she comes in with this bouquet, we're all standing there. Now we're all drawn. What's going on here? What just happened? And so she comes up to this guy, and she says, "Hi, I'm Lauren Salatin, and I picked these flowers, and I'm sure your wife would love a bouquet of flowers, and I'm selling them for $1." And what was hilarious? I mean, that was good enough. What was hilarious was she didn't even let him answer. She had plan B ready. But if you don't have a wife, I'm sure you know a lady who would love to have a bouquet of flowers. She was not going to take no. And my point is, if she were 11, she would never do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a space of entrepreneurial innocence and just fearlessness that I think we can tap somewhere between 8 and 10, and it's like a special little window, and by that time they have interest. They have some talents. You kind of know some things that they're interested in, and let them run with it. Encourage them to run with it, and let them have their own businesses, their own money, their own bank account. And boy, that's just it's unspeakably valuable in their, in their development, and then they're in developing their identity and their self-confidence.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a really good insight, and I see that I can really see that playing out in such a helpful way to give them that confidence, to give them those experiences why they have the confidence and they don't have the fear of man being an encumbering thing in their behavior. You mentioned that you and your wife were able to live. You said you were able to stand on the shoulders of giants. You were able to live rent free or mortgage free, and that doesn't always result in more stewardship and multiplication of that, right? Oftentimes it's almost associated with the opposite.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bless your heart. Often people get equity and then squander it or lose it or can't leverage it. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. It's yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So with that, because obviously you took that seriously, how do you feel like parents can do that? Because it's not everybody's going to have a farm, not everybody's going to have a property. That's a really practical thing to point to. But I think you can draw illustrations from a property or a working farm. Just in equipping our kids, we want all of our children to stand on our shoulders, and they are, whether or not it's a financial inheritance or a property that's an inheritance. They're going to inherit something from us, hopefully, that is beneficial. And so, how do you instill in your children a desire to multiply that, to continue on that progress, and I guess without being fearful, not just depend on the school of hard knocks and saying, hey, you got to pick your own self up by your bootstraps, because that's one way for children to learn work ethic. But I'd rather give them, go from strength to strength, and not necessarily, but not be the shirt sleeve to shirt sleeve, illustration either. And so, what are some tips that you can instill, that we could use to instill that desire in our children to not just take what we've built and sit on their hands, but to be somebody that multiplies it?
So, yeah, I think the key is to live a life that exudes abundance and not scarcity. So let me give you a very, very personal example for me. So my dad died very young. He was only 66. And of course, to me now, that just really, really seems young since I'm older than that. And but I was 31, and we'd been on the farm. Teresa and I had September 24, 1982. We came back to the farm full time. Took us 3 years to, as I said, to exhale and say, I think we're going to make it, the little engine that could. And dad was ill, and he called me into his into the bedroom one day, and he said, bring a pencil and a piece of paper. And so this was probably 1980, 6 or 7. We had just, again, we had just kind of, all right, we're going to make it. He said, bring a pencil and a piece of paper. And I went in. He said, let's brainstorm how many salaries we can generate from this little farm. And so we sat there, and I mean, Teresa and I we were still in the attic, we were just barely, I mean, we were doing okay, but we certainly weren't, making mint. We've never made mint, but here he is at this early stage of the game, already thinking what's possible. He wasn't thinking, whew, well, hope you can hang on here, because there's going to be droughts, and there's going to be grasshoppers, and there's going to be fungus, and it was all about what. And that day, I still have that, one of my favorite little pieces of paper. I still have it. It's all yellowed now. In his, it was back in about 1986. And that day he wrote them down. We kind of did it together. He wrote it. 22 full-time salaries. Guess how? Remember at the top of the program how many salaries I said we generate today on our farm?
22.
22.
Wow.
And so when I think of what is the greatest gift you can bestow on your kids, it's actually not physical equity. It's not physical equity. It's faith. It's faith in a can-do abundance mentality. And I mean, there are other things related, not being a victim, you've got to make your own, all those kind of things. But man, if you can so two little things that come to my mind. I wanted to write them down so I wouldn't forget them. From that legacy for me, one is when people say, what's the greatest gift, that your family bestowed on you, your the greatest legacy, and and I would have to say it was growing up in a household that was not peer dependent. Mom and dad literally, they did not care what neighbors said. They did not care what other family members said. They said, we're heading down this path. We're going to do this, and we don't need the affirmation of anybody else. We're heading down this path. And you guys are too young to remember the 1970 whatever 3 oil embargo when Jimmy Carter was president, and OPEC cut off oil, and you couldn't buy gasoline, but on if your license plate was even, you could buy it on even days. If it was odd, you could buy it on odd days. There was rationing, price controls. It was horrendous. Dad was 50, I don't know, I'm 55. And at the time he was working as the head bookkeeper at a about a 20-person metal fabrication shop. So he did all the estimations, all dad was he was an accountant. He was a money guy. And so a lot of my, my money stuff and financials come from him. Anyway, so and it was 17 miles away here from our house. It was across town on the other side of town. And at that point, he had consolidated his 5-day a week job that they said it would take. He had gotten it so efficient that he only had to go 3 days a week. And he said the goal of everyone should be to figure out how to do your job in less time instead of more time. And that's why we don't. That's why of all the 22 people that work here, nobody is an hourly wage earner. We don't pay hourly wages because it teaches dawdling. What we want is performance based or salary. That's another rabbit hole. Anyway, that oil embargo came. It was catastrophic in the culture. Those of us who lived through it. I was in high school at the time. Dad went down, bought a 10-speed bicycle. He's 55, 17 miles away, and he begins riding the bicycle to work. 17 miles one way. And at 55, and he said, if everybody would just do this, we can tell the Arabs to keep their oil. We don't need it. And that was the home I grew up in. And of course, at the time, I'm a teenager. Oh, crazy dad, crazy dad. Now I weep at the conviction, at just the just, what? We can do this. We don't have to depend on anybody else. We can do this. And by conviction, you just roll up your sleeve and you interact and you engage. You engage in a way that's helpful and meaningful and redemptive in capacity. So growing up in a household that just embraced different, embraced innovation, is just the greatest gift, I think, that I received from our family. The second one is living a life that every day is a beginning. It's not an ending, it's a beginning. And so often, we're heading down this trajectory, and you're far down a project, you're far down an activity, and you have this, we've arrived. We can't refine this anymore. We can't do it better. We've just arrived. And one of the things that I think Teresa and I have been really good at here, maybe even better than my parents, is this sense that we never arrive. There's always a new angle around the corner, and we embrace that. We embrace that so that excites kids. That excites kids because they don't want to feel like mom and dad did it all, or mom and dad accomplished it all. They want their lifetime of contribution too. And so when we cultivate that among ourselves, oh, look what we learned today. This was a new way to take the canning jars out of the canner or whatever it is, always looking for a different twist on it, we inculcate this idea of beginnings, that every day is a beginning, and that really attracts our kids to what we're doing because it's exciting.
Wow, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think I have like 6 more questions, but we just need to come out and see your farm. I want to see it all working. And I just really admire that the farm has been in your family now. You know, your dad owned it, he passed it on to you, you grew it, and you've successfully been able to hand it off too, because I think there's something to that that is so rare. I think we don't trust our kids enough to hand stuff off to them, even if we think they can handle it. It's become like the thing has become too precious to us that we can't trust it in anyone else's hands. And so you just having that vision to already, like, when your kids are in high school, going like, okay, are you going to be interested in this, or are we going to find someone else because someone is going to take that over? I don't know, just those mindsets are really, really cool. And what I hear you saying is that a lot of what, like, the best things we can pass on to our kids are our mindsets. And so that's really, really powerful. And I just want to thank you so much.
Yeah, and I would just say one little additional thing about that is that so many and so many farm families especially, they don't give enough responsibility and authority to the kids early enough for the kids to establish a track record. And so they come into adulthood being sheltered and protected. And, well, you know, we want to make sure that you don't do that, and you don't hurt the cow, you don't hurt the chicken, you don't crack the egg, you don't, ruin the tomato plant, whatever. And so they come into, 12, 13 years old, and there's no trust because they haven't done enough to earn trust. And so this is where this whole entrepreneurial responsibility track record, how to handle money, how to understand, profit and loss, and take risk and make your own decisions. That's where that track record is so important, to be able to hand that baton off, both for the young people to have the confidence to receive it, and the old people to have the confidence to give it.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much. I tell you what, it's so, yeah, I mean, nothing short of inspiring. And I'm so grateful that you've taken the time to speak with us. And it goes beyond, I don't know, I'm just extremely invigorated for our life and for passing on a vision to our children. And I love that abundance mindset versus the scarcity mindset has ramifications that are beyond just, thinking you can make a lot of money or thinking you're going to be poor. The ramifications really are, I think, wide and great. So I really appreciate that. Mr. Joel Salatin, thank you so much for your time. Huge blessing. We're going to link, I know our listeners are going to want to read your books after, listening to you, and they're going to want to learn more about your farm. So we'll link all that below, and just blessings on all the work that you continue to do, and please keep it up. We're so grateful for you.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be with you.